He was at the hospital cleaning the floor. The surgeons walked on. The doctors were already mocking him. But when a patient was dying and the janitor was nearby, something unbelievable happened. It was a busy Tuesday morning when Marcus Sullivan, 55, walked into the main lobby of the most prestigious hospital in Boston. The deep wrinkles on his face told stories no one there cared to hear. He gripped his cleaning cart with calloused hands, the same hands that trembled slightly when no one was looking. Marcus had been working as a janitor for 3 years, invisible to the doctors rushing by, transparent to the nurses discussing complex cases, non-existent to the patients waiting for miracles. He cleaned the same hallways where dozens of surgeons walked proudly, wearing their white coats like armor of superiority. The hospital was particularly tense that morning. An 8-year-old girl, Emily Rodriguez, was in the pediatric ICU awaiting an experimental heart surgery that could either save her or kill her. She suffered from a rare cardiac malformation, and her only chance of survival was a procedure so risky that every surgeon in the hospital had refused it. The case had become hallway talk, a weight hanging over everyone like a dark cloud. The girl's parents were desperate, and the medical team was powerless. On the 3rd floor, in the surgical wing where Marcus was mopping the floor, 3 doctors were speaking loudly, not caring that he was there. "It's a death sentence for any career," said Dr. Carla Mendez, chief of the cardiac surgery department, adjusting her designer glasses as she looked at Emily's scans on her tablet. She was 42, her hair perfectly tied in a bun, and she had a reputation for being brilliant and ruthless. "Whoever does this surgery is betting everything. If the girl dies on the table, it's over. Lawsuit, investigation, end of career." "Exactly," agreed Dr. Roberto Silva, a 34-year-old surgeon with ambition written in his every move. He straightened his expensive tie and went on. "I'm not throwing away 10 years of building my reputation on an impossible case. I've got a life ahead of me, you know." Nurse Patricia Costa, a 28-year veteran of the hospital, snorted as she organized charts at the station. "You doctors are all the same. When it's time to be on the news, everyone wants to be the hero. But when there's real risk, nobody wants to get their hands dirty." "Look who's talking," Roberto shot back, laughing. "You've been here doing the same thing for decades. At least we have ambition." Marcus kept cleaning silently, his movements slow and methodical. He heard every word, but kept his head down, like he always did. Invisible. Safe. "Hey you." Carla's voice cut through the air like a scalpel. "Janitor, you've mopped this area 3 times already. Go clean somewhere else. You're in the way." Marcus looked up briefly. "Sorry, doctor. I'm leaving now." "Wait," said Roberto, a cruel smile forming on his lips. "Carla, did you see this? The guy was practically glued to us, listening to our conversation about the surgery. I think we've got a janitor interested in medicine." All 3 laughed. "Seriously," Patricia said, looking at Marcus with disdain. "Do you understand anything we're talking about, mister?" "Marcus," he answered softly, without looking at anyone. "Marcus," Roberto repeated dramatically. "So, Marcus, since you seemed so interested, tell me, what would you do with little Emily? Got any surgical suggestions for us?" More laughter. "Let the man work," said Carla, still smiling. "He probably can't even spell cardiac." Marcus squeezed the mop handle hard, his knuckles turning white. He took a deep breath, counting to 10 the way his therapist had taught him. "Don't answer. Don't react. You deserve this. You deserve every humiliation. Sorry for the inconvenience," he murmured, starting to push his cart away. That was when the alarm went off. A scream from the adjoining hallway made everyone turn their heads. A stretcher was being rushed by 2 panicked nurses. "Cardiac arrest. Cardiac arrest," one of them shouted. "Male patient, 67 years old, code blue." Chaos took over the corridor. Carla, Roberto, and Patricia ran toward the emergency area, but the stretcher stopped abruptly just a few feet from Marcus. The patient, an elderly man, had no pulse, his eyes rolling back. "Where's the crash cart?" one of the nurses shouted. "It's on another floor." "Someone took it to an emergency," another replied. "We don't have time. He's going to die." Marcus dropped the mop. Something inside him broke, a barrier he had built with 15 years of guilt and self-punishment. His hands stopped trembling. His eyes, once downcast and ashamed, became sharp and focused. He stepped closer to the stretcher. "Get out of the way," Roberto shouted, shoving Marcus by the shoulder. "You're going to get in the way." But Marcus didn't move. He looked directly at the patient, his eyes scanning the man's body with a precision that stunned everyone. "He has cardiac tamponade," Marcus said, his voice firm and clear for the first time. "You can see the jugular vein distension and hypotension. If we don't drain the pericardium in the next 90 seconds, he's dead." Carla froze in the middle of the hall, turning slowly. "What did you say?" Marcus was already at the patient's side, his hands moving with a speed and precision impossible for a janitor. He tore open the man's shirt, exposing his chest. "I need an 18-gauge needle, a 50-milliliter syringe, and antiseptic. Now." The authority in his voice made everyone freeze. "Who the hell do you think you are?" Roberto exploded, though his voice shook with uncertainty. "He's right," Patricia shouted, looking at the portable monitor. "It's tamponade. The heart is being compressed." Marcus didn't wait for permission. He grabbed a basic emergency kit from the tray of one of the paralyzed nurses. His hands, those worn, trembling hands, now moved with surgical elegance, as if performing a choreography memorized decades ago. "Someone hold his head and manage his airway," Marcus ordered. "You," he pointed at a young nurse, "start counting out loud from now. I need to know how much time I've got." 1, 2, 3, the nurse began, his voice trembling. Marcus found the space between the 5th and 6th rib with 2 fingers, measuring with millimetric precision. He quickly cleaned the area and inserted the needle at a perfect 30-degree angle, advancing slowly while pulling back on the syringe plunger. 15, 16, 17. Carla was speechless. Roberto couldn't look away. Patricia had her hands over her mouth. 23, 24. Dark red blood began to fill the syringe. Marcus kept his hand steady, draining the fluid that was compressing the patient's heart. 31, 32. The monitor started to beep. A weak but present heartbeat appeared on the screen. "He's back," Patricia shouted. "We've got a pulse. We've got sinus rhythm." Marcus carefully removed the needle, applied pressure to the puncture site, and took a step back. His hands began trembling lightly again, as if his body remembered who he was supposed to be. The hallway was in absolute silence, except for the steady beeps of the monitor. "Take him to the ICU," Marcus said, his voice dropping back to its usual low, tired tone. "He'll need a surgical pericardial window in the next few hours. The tamponade can return." He picked up his mop again, but Carla grabbed his wrist. "Wait." She stared at him, her green eyes full of confusion and something else, fear maybe. "Who are you?" Marcus looked at his blood-stained hands, then at her face. "I'm the janitor," he answered simply, trying to pull away. "That's a lie." The voice came from behind them. An older man with gray hair, wearing a spotless white coat, was walking down the corridor with a tablet in his hands. It was Dr. Fernando Alves, the hospital's medical director, a living legend of cardiac surgery. He was 74, with the eyes of someone who had witnessed miracles and tragedies in equal measure. Fernando stopped in front of Marcus, his eyes filling with tears. "Marcus Sullivan," he said, his voice tight. "After 15 years, you still have the most perfect hands I've ever seen in an operating room." Roberto let out a nervous laugh. "Sir, with all due respect, that's the janitor. He cleans the bathrooms on the 3rd floor." Fernando didn't take his eyes off Marcus. "He cleans bathrooms now. But 15 years ago, this man was the most brilliant heart surgeon this country ever produced. Dr. Marcus Sullivan. He performed the first successful pediatric heart transplant in New England. He published 17 groundbreaking papers on minimally invasive techniques. He saved more than 200 lives before turning 40. The silence that followed was deafening. Carla released Marcus's wrist as if it had burned her. "No, that's not possible." "Marcus," Fernando said, taking a step forward. "Look at me." Marcus slowly raised his eyes, 2 tears rolling down his lined face. "I'm not that person anymore, Fernando. You know that." I know what you did, Fernando replied gently. I know about the accident. I know about Dr. James Peterson. I know you lost your license. And I know you spent the last 15 years punishing yourself for a mistake you made at your worst moment. James died because of me. Marcus's voice broke. He was my best friend, and I was drunk. My hand was shaking, and I thought I could. And you carried that alone for 15 years, Fernando finished. Working here, in the same hallways where you were a god, now invisible. Punishing yourself, watching other doctors do the work you loved. Patricia had tears in her eyes. My God, Roberto was pale. We didn't know. No one knew, Marcus said, wiping his face with the back of his stained hand. And that's how it had to be. I don't deserve to be here as a doctor. I deserve to mop the floors where the real doctors walk. Nonsense, Fernando cut in, his voice growing firmer. You just saved a life with an emergency procedure I'm not sure half our surgeons could do under pressure. Marcus, you may have made a terrible mistake, but look at what you're still capable of. No. Marcus shook his head vigorously. I don't have a license. I don't have the right. And little Emily. Fernando's voice sliced through like a blade. The 8-year-old girl, dying 3 floors above us because no surgeon in this hospital has the courage to perform the surgery that could save her. Marcus closed his eyes. Don't ask me that, he whispered, his voice torn. Fernando, please, don't ask me. I saw her scans. Fernando pressed on, unrelenting. Transposition of the great arteries with complex ventricular septal defect. The surgical window is closing. Another 48 hours, and she won't survive. Carla stepped forward, all her former arrogance completely gone. Dr. Alves, with all due respect, even if he is who you say, he doesn't have a medical license. It would be illegal. And letting a child die when we have someone capable of saving her is what? Fernando shot back. Ethical. He was drunk. Roberto exploded, but his voice lacked conviction. He killed someone. How can we trust? I had been sober for 7 years when that happened, Marcus said, opening his eyes. His voice was steady now, heavy with old, deep pain. 7 years clean. But that night, James and I had argued. A stupid argument about a paper we were publishing together. He wanted first authorship. So did I. Idiot egos of 2 surgeons who thought they were gods. Marcus took a deep breath, as if each word cost him a piece of his soul. I went home furious. I grabbed a bottle of whiskey I'd been saving for. I don't even know. A celebration, maybe. I started drinking. 1 glass became 2. 2 became 5. Then I got the call. Emergency at the hospital. 6-year-old child. Car accident. Heart laceration. I was the only pediatric heart surgeon available that night. Patricia had a hand over her chest, tears flowing freely. I thought I could do it. Marcus went on, his voice a tortured whisper. I thought I was good enough to perform drunk what others couldn't do sober. What insane arrogance. I walked into that or staggering, telling everyone I was just tired. Marcus, Fernando began, but Marcus raised his hand. No, you all need to hear this. You need to know who I really am. He looked at each of them. I started the surgery. My hands were shaking. I made the incision, opened the pericardium, and then I saw. It wasn't just any 6-year-old on my table. It was James's son, my best friend's only child, Thomas. Carla let out a muffled sob. James was in the observation room, Marcus said. Eyes shut again, reliving the nightmare. He trusted me. He had asked for me specifically. Only you can save my son, Marcus, he'd said over the phone. And I was trembling. My hand slipped. I cut the coronary artery. There was blood everywhere. I tried to repair it, but my hands, they wouldn't obey. Thomas died on my table while James watched through the glass, screaming, begging, dying along with his son. The hallway was so quiet that everyone's breathing could be heard. James never spoke to me again, Marcus said, opening his red eyes. 3 months later, he killed himself. Left a note. It said only, I can't live in a world without my son. Marcus, may God have mercy on your soul, Because I don't. Roberto was leaning against the wall, his face as white as paper. I lost my license, of course, Marcus said, wiping his face. I went to rehab, got sober. But sobriety doesn't bring back the dead. Sobriety doesn't erase what I did. So I came to work here, in the only place where I could remember every single day what I lost, what I destroyed. I cleaned the floors where James and I once saved lives together. I cleaned the windows of the ore where I killed his son. It's my penance. It's what I deserve. No, said a weak voice. Everyone turned. A woman around 40 stood in the hallway, wearing simple clothes, her eyes red from crying. Next to her, a man the same age held her hand. That's not what you deserve. Mrs. Rodriguez, Fernando said gently. Mr. Rodriguez, you shouldn't be here. We heard everything, the mother said, wiping her tears. We were on our way down for coffee when we heard the commotion. We heard about the man who saved that patient. We heard your story. She walked straight up to Marcus, who instinctively stepped back. My daughter is dying, she said, her voice trembling but determined. Every doctor in this hospital said no. They said the risk is too high, that their careers are too important. But you, she took Marcus's trembling hands. You're not worried about a career. You're worried about lives. Ma'am, you don't understand. Marcus tried to pull away, but she held on tight. I killed a child. I could kill your daughter. You saved that man over there with your bare hands, without proper equipment, under pressure, Mr. Rodriguez said, joining his wife. My wife and I have talked a lot these last weeks. We know Emily might die. The doctors were honest about that. But she will definitely die if no one tries. So I ask you, will the man who just saved a life, without hesitation, let my daughter die because he's afraid of his past? It's not fair, Marcus whispered, tears streaming. You can't ask me this. We're asking anyway, Mrs. Rodriguez said. Not as desperate parents, but as people who see in you something you no longer see in yourself. Redemption. Fernando placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. Old friend, you've punished yourself enough. James wouldn't want this. He wouldn't want you to throw away the gift God gave you. How do you know? Marcus looked at him. He hated me. I know because he came to see me 2 weeks before he died, Fernando said softly. He was breaking inside, Marcus. He told me he couldn't forgive you, but he also couldn't carry the hate. He said, Fernando, Marcus was the best of us. One day, when the pain passes, if it passes, I hope he goes back to being the surgeon he always was. Not for me, but for the other children who will need him. Marcus fell to his knees on the shiny floor he himself had cleaned hours earlier. His sobs echoed through the hallway as 15 years of guilt, pain, and self-punishment finally found a crack to escape. Patricia knelt beside him, placing a hand on his back. I've worked in this hospital for 28 years, she said, her voice full of emotion. I've seen hundreds of doctors come through here. Good ones, bad ones, arrogant, humble. But in all these years, I've never seen someone with so much talent wasted for so long. And I've never seen anyone care enough to punish himself like this. I judged you, Roberto said, his voice shaking. I looked at you and saw only a janitor. I laughed at you. But now I see a man who has more integrity in his little finger than I'll have in my whole life. He knelt as well. Forgive me. And please, save that girl. Show us how a real doctor acts. Carla remained standing, but her hands trembled as she held her tablet. I built my entire career on not making mistakes, she said, her cold voice starting to crack. I chose only cases I knew I'd win. I refused Emily because I was afraid to fail. But you failed in the worst way possible, and you're still here, still care, still want to save lives. I'm the coward here, not you. Marcus lifted his face, his red eyes meeting each of theirs. You don't understand the weight of a life in your hands. What it is to wake up every day knowing you killed someone. Then teach us, Fernando said, extending his hand. Teach us how to carry that weight with dignity. Teach us how to turn failure into purpose. But first, stand up and save Emily Rodriguez. Marcus looked at Fernando's extended hand. then at the hopeful faces of Emily's parents, at Patricia, Roberto, and Carla, all looking at him not with disdain, but with something he hadn't seen in 15 years, respect. "I don't have a license," he said, his voice still weak. "As medical director, I have the authority to allow you to operate under emergency supervision," Fernando said. "It's a legal loophole that exists for extreme situations exactly like this. You'll perform the surgery, but I'll be the surgeon of record. If something goes wrong, the responsibility is mine." "Fernando, no. Marcus, I'm 74. My career is ending. Yours may just be beginning again. Now stand up, wash those miraculous hands, and let's go save a little girl." Marcus took Fernando's hand and rose slowly. His whole body trembled, but something was different now. A spark, a small flame, almost extinguished, but still burning. "I need to see her exams," he said, his voice gaining strength. "I need at least 3 hours to review everything. I need to understand every detail of her anatomy before I make the first cut." "You'll have everything you need," Fernando said, smiling for the first time. "Carla, Roberto, you'll assist in his surgery. You'll learn how a true master works." "It will be an honor," Roberto said, and for the first time since Marcus had met him, there was no sarcasm in his voice. "I'll prep the ore," Patricia said, already moving. "And Marcus, welcome back." 3 hours later, Marcus stood in front of a monitor in a private conference room, analyzing every millimeter of Emily's scans. Fernando sat beside him, watching silently as Marcus made detailed notes in a notebook. "The septal defect is more complex than I thought," Marcus murmured, zooming in on a specific image. "Look here, Fernando. The transposition isn't simple. The coronaries are in anomalous positions. If I try the conventional approach, you'll cut the left coronary," Fernando finished. "I saw it. But if I go in here," Marcus drew on the paper, "using a modified lateral approach, I can access both defects without compromising coronary flow. It'll be longer, more delicate, but safer." Fernando smiled. Still the same Marcus, always finding the path no one else sees. Marcus stopped, his pen hovering above the paper. "What if my hands shake?" "You've just spent 3 hours drawing surgical diagrams, so precise they look like art," Fernando said. "Your hands didn't shake once. They only tremble when you remember you're supposed to be trembling. In the OR, when you focus on saving a life, they know exactly what to do." A knock at the door interrupted them. Carla walked in, now wearing casual clothes instead of her white coat. "May I speak with you, Dr. Sullivan?" she asked formally. Marcus blinked. It was the first time in 15 years anyone had called him doctor. "Of course," he replied. Carla entered and closed the door. She stood awkwardly for a moment before sitting down. "I need to apologize," she began. "Not just for how I treated you today, but for the last 3 years. You've worked in this hospital all this time, and I never even asked your name until today. I saw you clean my OR hundreds of times, and I never really saw you." "You had no reason to," Marcus said gently. "I chose to be invisible." "Even so." Carla looked down at her hands. "After Dr. Alves told us your story, I looked you up. I read your papers. I watched recordings of your old surgeries in the hospital archives. Marcus, you are extraordinary, and I'm a joke compared to you." "Carla, no, let me finish." She raised her hand. "I built my entire career being the best, the safest, the one who never fails. I only choose cases I know I'll win. I only operate when the odds are my favor. I thought that made me excellent, but today I realized it just makes me mediocre. You risked everything, lost everything, and still, when you saw someone dying, you didn't hesitate. You didn't think about your reputation or your career. You just acted. That's what a real doctor does." She wiped away a tear. "I refused Emily because I was afraid of tarnishing my perfect record. I would have let a child die to protect my vanity. What kind of doctor does that make me?" Marcus leaned forward, his hands clasped. "The kind of doctor who can still change. Carla, you're 42. I was 40 when I destroyed my life. You still have time to decide what kind of surgeon you want to be." "How do you do it?" she asked, looking at him with genuine admiration. "How can you be so compassionate after everything you went through?" "Because I know what it's like to be on the other side," Marcus replied. "I know what it's like to be judged by your worst moment. I know what it's like to carry guilt that crushes your soul. And I know that if someone had shown me compassion when I needed it most, maybe I wouldn't have spent 15 years hiding." Fernando watched in silence, a sad smile on his face. "Will you be in the OR tomorrow?" Marcus asked. "If you'll have me," she said. "I'd like to learn, not just the technique, but how you do what you do. How you find courage after everything." "Courage isn't the absence of fear," Marcus said. "It's doing what needs to be done despite the fear. You're welcome in the OR. Actually, I'll need you. Your hands are good, Carla. I've seen you operate a few times while I cleaned the observation room. You have talent. You just need purpose." Carla smiled, genuinely for the first time. "Thank you, Dr. Sullivan." After she left, Fernando stood and placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "You know this doesn't end with Emily, right?" he said. "If you pull this off, if she survives, the entire medical community will want to know who you are. Your story will come out anyway." "I know," Marcus sighed. "Part of me wants to go back to being invisible afterward, but another part is tired of hiding." "Well, I have plans for you," Fernando said, picking up a folder he had brought. "Do you remember Dr. Richard Chin? He's on the state medical board now. We talked today. He believes we can begin a process to reinstate your license. It'll take time. You'll need evaluations, supervision, but it's possible." Marcus looked at the folder as if it were a snake. "Fernando, I don't know if I'm ready." "You'll never feel ready," Fernando said. "But it's time to stop punishing yourself and start redeeming yourself. And I don't just mean getting your license back. I mean something bigger." He opened the folder, revealing documents and proposals. "I want you to help me create a program," he continued. "A rehabilitation and reintegration program for medical professionals who lost their licenses due to addiction or mistakes. Doctors, nurses, techs, talented people who made mistakes but deserve a second chance. You'd be perfect to lead it." Marcus stayed quiet for a long moment, looking at the documents. "Why do you believe in me so much?" he finally asked, his voice thick with emotion. "Because you were my best student," Fernando said simply. "Because I've trained hundreds of surgeons in my life, and you were the only one who operated not just with his hands, but with his heart. And because James made me promise something before he died." "What?" "He made me promise that if you ever came back, if you ever found the courage to operate again, I wouldn't let you quit. He told me, Fernando, Marcus will want to punish himself forever, but the world needs his hands. The children need him. Don't let my son's death be in vain. Don't let Marcus's talent die with him." Marcus closed his eyes, silent tears falling. "James said that." "He did," Fernando confirmed. "He was dying inside, Marcus. The pain of losing Thomas was unbearable. But even then, in the middle of all that suffering, he didn't want you to waste your life. He wanted you to come back. He wanted you to save other children, to honor Thomas's memory by doing what you do best." Marcus opened his eyes, staring at the ceiling as if he could find James somewhere beyond it. "I tried so hard to forget," he whispered. "Tried to erase who I was. But every time I see a doctor operate, every time I clean and empty or my hands itch, my heart races. It's like my body knows I was born to do this, even when my mind tells me I don't deserve it." "Then stop fighting who you are," Fernando said. "Embrace it. Use your pain as fuel. Turn your tragedy into purpose. Save Emily, and then help me save other doctors like you." Marcus took the folder, his hands finally steady. "Okay," he said, his voice strong. "Okay, I'll do it. I'll try. For Emily. For James. For Thomas. And maybe for me too." Fernando hugged him, and the two men stood there for a moment, two surgeons separated by decades, but united by purpose. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He lay in his small apartment staring at the ceiling when his phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Hello, Dr. Sullivan?" A young male voice asked. "My name is Daniel. Daniel Peterson." Marcus's heart stopped. "Peterson. I'm Thomas's brother, the young man said. I'm 25 now. I was very young when everything happened, but I heard about you today. News spread through the hospital, and I needed to call. Marcus sat up in bed, his heart pounding. Daniel, I have no words to say how sorry I am. What I did to your family, I know, Daniel said, his voice calm. I know everything. My mom told me the whole story when I got older. About you and my father. About the accident. About how everything fell apart. Your father never forgave me, Marcus said, his voice breaking. And he had every right. My father was broken. Daniel interrupted. He lost his son and, in that pain, lost himself too. But before he died, he wrote another letter. One my mom only gave me when I turned 21. Marcus waited, barely able to breathe. He wrote it to me. Daniel continued. It said he loved me, loved Thomas, and knew he was making the wrong decision. But the pain was too much. And at the end of the letter, he wrote about you. What did he say? Marcus could barely form the words. Daniel paused, and Marcus heard paper rustling on the other end. Daniel read, his voice tight. If you ever meet Marcus Sullivan, tell him I forgave him. It took my death for me to finally understand this, but I forgave him. He made a terrible mistake, but he was my friend. He was a brilliant man. And the cruelest part is that if anyone could have saved Thomas, it would have been him. Sober, he could have done that surgery in his sleep. But addiction caught him at the worst possible moment. Tell Marcus I don't want him to waste the gift he has. Tell him to come back. Tell him to save the children I can no longer help. Tell him Thomas would like that. Marcus sobbed, the phone shaking in his hand. He really wrote that? Yes, Daniel said. And there's more. I became a medical student, Dr. Sullivan. I'm in my 3rd year at Johns Hopkins. I chose pediatric heart surgery. Because of my dad. Because of Thomas. And because of you. Because of me? My mom told me stories about the doctor you were before the accident, Daniel explained. About the lives you saved. The innovations you brought. How you operated with a compassion that was rare. And I thought, if someone so talented can fall, but still care enough to keep trying to be better, then there's hope for all of us. Marcus wiped his face with trembling hands. Daniel, I don't know what to say. Don't say anything, the young man replied. Just save that girl tomorrow. Show the world that second chances matter. And when you officially become a doctor again, I want to do my residency with you. I want to learn from the man my father once called the best surgeon he had ever known. Your father said that. Constantly. Daniel laughed through tears. He said he was jealous of you. That you made surgery look like poetry while he made it look like math. He admired you deeply, Dr. Sullivan. And so do I. After hanging up, Marcus sat in the dark of his room for hours, holding an old photo he kept hidden in a drawer. It was of him and James, 20 years younger, smiling in their white coats, holding a prize they'd won together. I'll do this for you, old friend, he whispered to the photo. I'll make Thomas proud. I promise. The morning of the surgery came with a heavy silence. Marcus was in the doctor's locker room, putting on green scrubs for the first time in 15 years. His hands trembled as he tied the strings. Roberto entered, already dressed and ready. OR3 is ready, he said. Full team in place. Carla's doing the equipment check. Fernando's with the family. Marcus just nodded, staring at his hands. Hey, Roberto stepped closer. You're going to do great. I watched all your old videos last night. All 18 surgeries we have archived. You weren't just good. You were an artist. I was, Marcus said. Past tense. I was. No. Roberto shook his head. Yesterday, when you saved that man in the hallway, I saw the same precision, the same confidence. It's all still inside you. You just have to trust it. And if I fail, then you fail, Roberto said simply. But at least you tried. You know what the difference between you and me is. I would never even try. I would have let that girl die to protect my perfect career. You're risking everything again to save her. That's not weakness. That's heroism. Marcus looked at the young surgeon with new eyes. You've changed since yesterday. We all have, Roberto smiled. It's hard not to, after seeing a miracle. In the OR, Emily Rodriguez was under anesthesia, her small body covered by blue sterile drapes. Only her chest was exposed, the spot where Marcus would make the incision marked in purple. The team was in position, Carla as first assistant, Roberto as second, Patricia as scrub nurse, and 4 other specialized staff. Fernando watched from the gallery above, surrounded by other doctors curious about Marcus's legendary return. Marcus entered last, his hands already scrubbed and gloved. The room fell completely silent. He positioned himself at the table, looking at Emily's sleeping face. An innocent child, exactly the same age Thomas had been when he died. "Are you okay?" Carla asked gently. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, took a deep breath, and when he opened them, they were the eyes of a surgeon. Focused, determined, steady. "Scalpel," he said, extending his hand. Patricia placed the instrument in his palm. Marcus held it, and his hand stopped trembling completely. "Let's save a life," he said, looking at his team. Together. He made the first incision with millimetric precision, the blade gliding smoothly through the skin. There was no hesitation, no fear, only absolute focus. "Cautery," he said, and Carla was already there with the instrument. "Perfect," Marcus murmured, working quickly but carefully. "Carla, look here. See this curve of the rib? I'm going in 2 millimeters below. If I go in at the standard angle, I'll damage the intercostal nerve." "I never thought of that," Carla said, watching closely. "There are always multiple ways to reach the same place," Marcus explained as he worked. "The difference between a good surgeon and a great one is choosing the path that causes the least damage on the way." He opened the chest with a technique that made it look easy, every movement fluid and deliberate. "Roberto, hold here with the retractor," he instructed, "but gently. Remember, she's 8. Her bones are pliable but fragile. Too much pressure, and you'll cause microfractures." "Got it." Roberto adjusted his hold. Marcus finally had a full view of Emily's heart, and what he saw made everyone in the room hold their breath. "My God," Carla whispered. "It's worse than the scans showed." Emily's heart beat unevenly, the major arteries completely reversed, the ventricular septal defect much larger than the images suggested. It was an anatomical tangle that defied any conventional approach. "It's a nightmare," Roberto said tensely. "No," Marcus said calmly, his eyes scanning every detail. "It's a puzzle, and every puzzle has a solution. We just have to find it." He stayed silent for 30 seconds, just watching, his brain processing thousands of possibilities. In the gallery above, doctors whispered among themselves, some shaking their heads in disbelief. "He's hesitating," one of them said. "No," Fernando replied firmly. "He's thinking." That's what Marcus always did. He visualizes the entire surgery before making the first strategic move. Suddenly, Marcus smiled slightly. "Carla, do you remember that technique I published in 2008? The modified arterial switch with dual-stage coronary reconstruction?" Carla thought for a moment, then her eyes widened. "The article that won the international award, but it was never done in humans, only in models." "Until today," Marcus said. "It's our only shot. I'll have to do the switch first, then rebuild the coronaries in a completely new pattern, and finally repair the septum, in that exact order." "That will take hours," Roberto said, worried. "The cardiopulmonary bypass time. It'll be long, yes," Marcus agreed. "That's why I need everyone completely focused. No distractions. No mistakes. Patricia, I'll need the microvascular instruments. The smallest we've got." "Already set aside," Patricia said, her confidence in Marcus obvious. Marcus began to work, his hands moving with a grace that left everyone mesmerized. He narrated each step, not just for his immediate team, but for the doctors watching above. "First, I'm going to isolate the pulmonary artery," he explained, his fingers working with delicate forceps. "See how it's twisted here? If I simply cut and reposition it, I'll create tension that'll lead to a postoperative rupture. So I'll make small relieving incisions along the arterial wall first." He did exactly that, each cut so small and precise it looked impossible for human eyes to guide. How can you see that? Roberto asked, amazed. You don't see with your eyes, Marcus said. You feel with your hands. The instruments become extensions of your fingers. You feel the tissue resistance, the texture, the force you need. It's like playing piano. You don't look at every key. You just know where they are. An hour passed. Then two. Marcus didn't stop once, his hands working constantly. Sweat rolled down his forehead, but his concentration was absolute. Blood pressure dropping, the anesthesiologist announced. Expected, Marcus said calmly. I'm manipulating the aorta. It'll stabilize in 20 seconds. Carla, prep the 7-0 proline suture. I'll need to close this anastomosis fast. Exactly 20 seconds later, the pressure stabilized. How did you know? The anesthesiologist asked, impressed. I've done this 47 times before, Marcus replied. Your body remembers, even when your mind tries to forget. In the gallery, Fernando wiped silent tears. Next to him, a younger surgeon whispered, He's not human. It's impossible to work with that precision under this pressure. He's very human, Fernando replied. That's exactly why he's extraordinary. 3 hours into the surgery, Marcus reached the most delicate part, reconstructing the coronary arteries. In a child, these were tiny vessels, fragile as hairs, vital for keeping the heart alive. This is where I failed with Thomas, Marcus said suddenly, his voice low but steady. I was operating right here, at this exact point, when my hand shook. The room fell silent. But today, he continued, positioning the microscopic needle, today my hands aren't shaking, because today I'm not operating for ego or reputation. I'm operating for Emily, for her parents, for every child who deserves a second chance, and for Thomas, who never got his. He placed a stitch, each suture so perfect it looked like the work of a machine, not human hands. First coronary reconstructed, he announced. Carla, check the flow. Carla used a Doppler probe. Perfect flow. No obstruction. Second coronary, Marcus said, moving to the next vessel. 30 minutes later, Marcus finished the vascular reconstruction and finally reached the septal defect. This is the easy part, ironically, he said with a hint of humor. After rearranging the entire heart's plumbing, closing a hole is almost relaxing. Some in the team laughed nervously, the tension beginning to ease. Marcus repaired the septum efficiently, his stitches forming a flawless pattern. Done, he said at last. Now comes the moment of truth. Let's take her off bypass and see if our work actually did anything. The perfusionist gradually reduced the flow from the machine. Emily's heart, maintained artificially until then, now had to work on its own. For one terrifying moment, nothing happened. Come on, little one, Marcus whispered. You can do it. You're strong. Then, like an engine waking up after a long sleep, Emily's heart began to beat. Slowly at first, then more strongly. We've got rhythm, the anesthesiologist announced. Blood pressure rising. Oxygen saturation normalizing. The heart pumped strong and regular, the reconstructed arteries functioning perfectly, the repaired septum holding firm. Coronary flow is perfect, Carla said, checking again with the Doppler. All sutures holding. No leaks. Marcus watched the heart for another minute, making sure everything was stable. Then, for the first time in 4.5 hours, he let out a relieved breath. Let's close, he said, a small smile appearing on his tired face. The gallery above erupted in applause. Doctors who had watched in tense silence for hours now celebrated, as though they'd witnessed a miracle, because in a way they had. Fernando hurried down the stairs, entering the OR as Marcus placed the final stitches in Emily's chest. You did it, Fernando said, his voice thick with emotion. You really did it. We did it, Marcus corrected, looking at his team. Carla, your hands were essential. Roberto, your retraction was perfect. Patricia, you anticipated every instrument I needed. This was a team effort. Carla wiped tears behind her surgical mask. It was an honor, Dr. Sullivan. When they finished closing and transferring Emily to the pediatric ICU, Marcus left the OR staggering with exhaustion. He went straight to the locker room, sat down on the bench, and finally allowed the emotions to hit him. He had done it. After 15 years. After all the pain, guilt, and self-punishment. He had saved a life. The door opened and Roberto walked in, sitting beside him. "What happened in there?" the young surgeon said. "Was the most incredible thing I've ever seen. And I trained at Johns Hopkins, did residency at the Mayo Clinic. But I've never, ever seen anyone operate like you." "Thank you," Marcus said, his voice tired but sincere. "No, thank you," Roberto said. "You showed me what it really means to be a doctor. It's not about perfect stats or impressive CVs. It's about doing what's right, even when it's hard, even when you're terrified." "You were scared?" Marcus asked, surprised. "Terrified," Roberto admitted. "I kept thinking, what if she dies? What if we fail?" "But you were calm, focused. How do you do that?" "Because fear doesn't change anything," Marcus replied. "Emily needed help. I had the skills to help her. Fear wouldn't save her. Action would. So I chose to act." Roberto sat silently for a moment, absorbing the words. "I want to be like you," he said finally. "Not the perfect surgeon. The brave one. The one who tries even when it's hard." Marcus put a hand on his shoulder. "You're already on the right path. Yesterday, you humiliated me. Today, you're here, admitting you learned something. That takes more courage than any surgery." In the waiting room, Emily's parents were sitting, holding hands, when Fernando appeared. They jumped up immediately, terror and hope mixed on their faces. "She's alive," Fernando said, smiling. "The surgery was a complete success. Emily is in the ICU now, but all her vital signs are stable. She's going to recover." Mrs. Rodriguez collapsed into her husband's arms, sobbing. Mr. Rodriguez tried to hold himself together, but tears ran freely down his face. "Dr. Sullivan?" the mother asked between sobs. "Can we see him? Can we thank him?" "He's getting ready to see Emily in the ICU," Fernando said. "But I'm sure he'd like to see you afterward." "That man saved our daughter," Mr. Rodriguez said, his voice shaking. "When everyone else said no, when there was no hope, he risked everything. How do you thank someone who gives you your whole world back?" "By giving him what he desperately needs," Fernando said. "Forgiveness, redemption, and the chance to do it again." 3 days later, Emily woke up. Marcus was at her bedside when her eyes slowly opened. "Hi, little one," he said gently, adjusting her pillow. "How are you feeling?" Emily looked around, confused, then focused on him. "Are you the doctor?" "I am," Marcus said, smiling. "My name is Dr. Sullivan, but you can call me Marcus." "My chest hurts," she said, making a face. "I know, sweetie. That's because we did surgery to fix your heart. But the pain will go away, I promise. And now your heart is strong and healthy." "Really?" Her eyes lit up. "Really. You'll be able to run, play, do everything kids your age do." Emily smiled, then her expression grew serious. "Mom and Dad were really scared. I heard them crying at night. They thought I was going to die." Marcus felt a tightness in his chest. "Your parents love you very much, and they're very brave, just like you." "I was scared too," Emily admitted. "But a nurse told me you were the best doctor in the world, that if anyone could save me, it was you." "I'm not the best in the world," Marcus said softly, "but I did my best, and I had an amazing team helping me." "Thank you for saving me," Emily said, holding out her small hand. Marcus took her hand gently, and something inside him finally healed. A wound that had been bleeding for 15 years began to close. "Thank you for letting me," he said, his voice thick, "for giving me the chance to do what I love again." The following week, Marcus's story spread like wildfire. Local newspapers published pieces on the miracle janitor. National news programs wanted to interview him. The medical community buzzed. But Marcus refused all interviews. He didn't want fame. He didn't want to be celebrated. He just wanted to keep working. Fernando, however, had other plans. "Meeting at the state medical board in 1 hour," he said, appearing in the staff room where Marcus was having coffee. "They want to discuss your case." "Fernando, I already told you I'm not ready. and I already told you that you'll never feel ready. Fernando cut in. Marcus, in 1 week you saved 2 lives. The man in cardiac arrest is home now, fully recovered. Emily is walking the halls, smiling. You proved your worth. Now it's time to make it official. At the meeting, Marcus sat before a panel of 12 doctors, including Dr. Richard Chun, who had been his colleague decades earlier. Dr. Sullivan, Richard began. This is an unusual situation. You lost your license 15 years ago for conduct that led to a patient's death. Normally, that would be permanent, but the circumstances of your case are extraordinary. Marcus remained silent, his hands clasped on the table. We reviewed all documentation. Richard went on. The surgery you performed on Emily Rodriguez was technically perfect. We consulted 5 international specialists in pediatric cardiac surgery. They all agreed that the approach you used was not only appropriate, but innovative. One of them said, and I quote, "This is the most impressive surgery we've ever analyzed. The anatomical complexity combined with perfect execution is simply extraordinary." Another board member, a woman around 60 named Dr. Helena Barbosa, leaned forward. Dr. Sullivan, I was on the board when your license was revoked 15 years ago, she said seriously. I voted in favor of revocation. I believed, and still believe, that doctors must be held to the highest standards. You violated the most sacred trust of our profession. Marcus nodded slowly. Yes, ma'am, I did. But, she continued, I also believe in redemption. I believe people can change. You spent 15 years not running from your mistake, but living with it, working in the same hospital where it all happened. That requires a strength of character few possess. A third member, Dr. Paulo Mendez, flipped through documents. We also reviewed your life over the last 15 years, he said. You religiously attended Alcoholics Anonymous. You went to weekly therapy. You worked honestly as a janitor, never hiding who you were from your employer. You've been sober for 14.5 years. That's a genuine transformation. 14.5 years. Richard asked. There was a relapse. Marcus took a deep breath. Yes, 6 months ago, on the anniversary of James's death, I bought a bottle. I sat in my apartment, staring at it for 3 hours. I opened it, poured a glass, raised it to my lips. The board waited in silence, and then I poured it all down the drain. Marcus continued. Every drop, because I realized drinking wouldn't bring James back. It wouldn't bring Thomas back. It would only destroy me more. So I called my AA sponsor, told him about the temptation, and we restarted the count. Today I have 6 months and 1 week. Honesty, Helena said with a small smile. You could have lied, but you chose the truth. That also speaks to your character. Richard stood, walking around the table. Marcus, the board debated your case at length. There are 3 positions. Some believe you should never practice medicine again. Some believe your license should be fully restored immediately. And some believe in a middle ground. And what's the middle ground? Marcus asked. Provisional license, Richard explained. For 2 years, you'd operate only under direct supervision. Every surgery would be reviewed. You'd undergo quarterly psychological evaluations and random drug tests. After 2 years, if all goes well, your license would be fully reinstated. Marcus processed this. And which position won? We'll vote now, Richard said. In front of you. Because you deserve to see the process. The 12 board members voted one by one, holding up colored cards. Red for no, yellow for provisional license, green for full reinstatement. When they were done, there were 2 reds, 3 greens, and 7 yellows. Provisional license approved by majority, Richard announced. Dr. Marcus Sullivan, you are officially authorized to practice medicine again under supervision. One of the first participants was Dr. Andre Costa, a 48-year-old orthopedic surgeon who had lost his license after developing an addiction to painkillers following a back injury. He'd been clean for 2 years, but no hospital wanted to give him a chance. I don't know if I can do this, Andre said, looking at his trembling hands as he practiced suturing on a training model. It's been so long. What if I forgot how? Marcus sat beside him in the simulation room. You didn't forget, he said gently. Your body remembers. Your hands know what to do. The problem isn't technical skill. It's fear. Fear of what? Of being the same person who failed, Marcus replied. Of going back to old habits. Of not deserving to be here. Andre looked at Marcus, recognition in his eyes. That's exactly it. How did you know? Because it's what I felt for 15 years, Marcus said with a sad smile. Andre, can I tell you a secret? I still feel fear every time I walk into an OR. I still have nightmares about James and Thomas. I still wake up some days thinking I don't deserve to be here. And what do you do when that happens? I get up anyway, Marcus said. I choose to do what's right despite the fear. I choose to honor my patients above my fears. And every day I do that, it gets a little easier. Andre took a deep breath, picking up the needle again. This time, his hands were steadier. Thank you, Dr. Sullivan, for believing in me. Thank you for having the courage to try again, Marcus replied. Another participant was Nurse Julia Martins, 34, who had lost her license after a medication error that nearly killed a patient. She was paralyzed by guilt and depression. I was exhausted, she told the therapy group Marcus led weekly. I'd worked 3 shifts in a row because we were short-staffed. I misread the label. I gave 10 times the insulin dose I should have. The patient went into hypoglycemic shock. Almost died. She wiped away tears. Luckily, another nurse realized quickly, and we managed to reverse it. But I can't forgive myself. How can I be a nurse again knowing I could kill someone with a stupid mistake? Marcus leaned forward in his chair. Julia, may I ask a question? Was that your first mistake in how many years of nursing? 12 years, she replied. I'd never made a mistake before. 12 years of impeccable service, Marcus said. Thousands of patients cared for perfectly. And one mistake in a moment of extreme exhaustion defines who you are. But I could have killed someone. And how many lives did you save in those 12 years? Marcus asked gently. How many patients didn't die because you were there, vigilant, competent, compassionate? Julia went quiet, thinking. I never thought of it that way. We are our own worst critics, Marcus said. We forget that mistakes don't define us. They're just parts of who we are. Healthcare professionals are human. Humans fail. But humans also learn, grow, and become better. Another member of the group, a radiology tech named Pedro, spoke up. Dr. Sullivan, you talk like it's easy to forgive yourself. But how do you actually do that? How do you convince your brain you deserve a second chance? Marcus fell silent for a long moment before answering. I don't think it's about convincing, he said finally. It's about accepting. Accepting that you made a mistake. Accepting that you caused pain. Accepting that you'll never fully forget or erase it. And then, despite all that, choosing to move forward. Choosing to be better. Choosing to honor those affected by your error by doing good for others. He looked at each person in the circle. Thomas Peterson died because of me. That's a fact I'll carry until I die. But I can choose what I do with that fact. I can let it destroy me, or I can let it motivate me to save other children, to honor his memory by being the best surgeon I can be. Julia wiped her face and smiled faintly. I want to try again. I want to be a nurse again. For that patient I almost killed. To prove I can be better. Then we'll work together to make that happen, Marcus said, smiling back. A year after Emily's surgery, Massachusetts General Hospital hosted a special event. It was a celebration of the Phoenix program and its successes. Andre had completed supervised reintegration and performed his first independent orthopedic surgery. A complete success. Julia was back in nursing, now in the same ICU where she'd made her mistake, but this time as a mentor to new nurses, teaching about medication safety. Marcus was on stage beside Fernando, looking out at an audience of over 500 people, doctors, nurses, patients, families, and journalists. When I started this program, Marcus said at the microphone, I didn't know if it would work. I didn't know if anyone would trust professionals who had failed. But you did. And look what we've accomplished together. He pointed to a screen where statistics appeared. 23 professionals rehabilitated, 18 licenses restored, 0 incidents or relapses, 147 supervised surgeries, with a 100% success rate, 3 medical articles published about the program. But numbers don't tell the whole story, he continued. The real story is in the lives transformed. In Andre, who now helps other surgeons struggling with addiction. In Julia, who has become one of the most dedicated nurses in this hospital. In every person who had the courage to stand up after falling. Emily Rodriguez was invited on stage. Now 9 years old, she walked normally, her heart completely healed. Dr. Marcus saved my life, she said into the microphone, her voice clear and strong. But he did more than that. He showed that people can change. That mistakes aren't the end. My parents told me a story, and I learned that being brave isn't never falling. It's getting up every time you do. The audience applauded, many in tears. And there's one more thing, Emily said, smiling mischievously. She looked toward the wings and waved. Come here. To everyone's surprise, Daniel Peterson walked onto the stage. The young doctor, now 26, wore a white coat from Massachusetts General Hospital. Everyone, Fernando announced, clearly moved. I'd like to present the newest resident in our pediatric cardiac surgery program, Dr. Daniel Peterson. Murmurs of surprise filled the auditorium. Those who knew Marcus's story were stunned. Daniel walked up to Marcus and held out his hand. Dr. Sullivan, he said formally, I request to be your resident. I want to learn from the best. I want to honor my father's and my brother's memory by becoming the kind of surgeon they admired. The kind of surgeon you are. Marcus was frozen, tears running freely down his face. He looked at Daniel's outstretched hand, then into his eyes with the same determination James had always had. Daniel, Marcus could barely speak. Are you sure? I killed your brother. No, Daniel said firmly. A terrible mistake killed my brother. But you spent 16 years trying to make up for it, saving other children, helping other professionals, building a legacy of redemption. My father would be proud. Thomas would be proud. And I want to be part of this. Marcus took Daniel's hand and pulled him into a tight hug. The two men stood there on stage as the audience rose in a standing ovation. It was more than a moment of reconciliation. It was a circle closing, a wound finally healing. When they parted, Marcus wiped his face and smiled through his tears. It would be the greatest honor of my life to teach you, Daniel. But I should warn you, I'm a demanding mentor. I'll make you work harder than any other resident. I wouldn't expect anything less, Daniel smiled. My father always said you never accepted anything less than excellence. Carla joined them on stage, followed by Roberto and Patricia. If I may, Carla said into the microphone, I'd like to make an announcement too. Dr. Sullivan, under your guidance these past few months, I've learned more about medicine than in my entire career. You've taught me that being a surgeon isn't about perfect statistics, but about compassionate courage. She held up an envelope. So, on behalf of the cardiac surgery department, I'd like to offer you a permanent position as Director of Pediatric Cardiac Surgery. That includes full license to operate independently, team leadership, and authority to continue expanding the Phoenix program. The auditorium erupted in applause again. Marcus looked at Fernando, who was smiling like a proud father. Fernando, Marcus asked, seeking guidance. You don't need my permission anymore, old friend. Fernando said, you earned this yourself. But for the record, I think it's the best decision this hospital has ever made. Marcus accepted the envelope with trembling hands. 16 years earlier, he had lost everything. Now he was getting not just his career back, but something greater, purpose, community, and the chance to turn his greatest failure into his greatest legacy. I accept, he said, his voice firm, and I promise everyone in this room that I will honor this trust. Every surgery, every patient, every professional I train, everything will be done with the excellence and compassion James always believed I had. 18 months later, Marcus sat in his new office, no longer a janitor's closet, but a spacious room overlooking Boston. Diplomas were back on the walls. Medical publications covered his desk. A photo of James, Thomas, and himself in happier times stood prominently in a corner. Daniel walked in without knocking, already comfortable after months of residency. "We've got a case," he said, holding a tablet. 7-year-old boy, hypoplastic left heart. Family came from Ohio specifically asking for you to operate. Marcus took the tablet, analyzing the scans. "It's complicated," he murmured, "but viable. Schedule it for Friday. You'll be my first assistant." "Seriously?" Daniel smiled. "I thought I was still just observing." "You're ready," Marcus said. "I've seen you in simulations. You have your father's hands. Talented but careful. It's time for you to do more than watch." Daniel grew serious for a moment. "Marcus, can I ask something personal?" "Of course. Do you still have nightmares?" "About that night?" Marcus stopped, considering the question honestly. "Yes," he admitted. "Not as often as before, but yes. Some nights I wake up in a panic, reliving every second. I see James screaming through the glass. I see my hand shaking. I see Thomas." He took a deep breath. "But now, when I wake up, I do something different. I get up, go to that board." He pointed to a whiteboard covered in names, "and read the names of every patient I've saved since I came back. There are 47 so far. 47 lives. 47 families who didn't have to feel the pain James felt." Daniel looked at the board, reading the names silently. "Emily Rodriguez is at the top," he noted. "She always will be," Marcus said. "She was the first. The one who showed me redemption was possible." "And Thomas?" Daniel asked gently. "Where does he fit in all this?" Marcus touched the photo on his desk. "He's in every surgery I do. In every decision I make. In every moment I choose to be better. He's not here anymore, Daniel. He never will be. But his legacy is in every life I save in his memory." Daniel placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Thank you," he said, "for honoring my family like this, for turning our greatest tragedy into something beautiful." That Friday, Marcus and Daniel operated together for the first time. The boy from Ohio survived, the surgery a complete success. Afterwards, exhausted but satisfied, they left the OR to find the family waiting. The boy's mother ran to Marcus, grabbing his hands. "You saved my son," she cried. "How can I ever thank you?" Marcus smiled, glancing at Daniel beside him. "By living," he said simply. "Let your son grow up, live a full life. That's all the thanks I need." As the family celebrated, Roberto appeared in the hallway. "Marcus, you've got a call. They say it's urgent. Something about the Phoenix program." Marcus took the call in a private room. "Dr. Sullivan? My name is Dr. Richard Thompson. I'm president of the American Medical Association. We've heard about your program, and we're impressed. We'd like to expand the Phoenix program nationally. Make it the standard model for rehabilitation of medical professionals across the country." Marcus was speechless for a moment. "Nationally," he repeated. "That would be huge." "Your program has a 100% success rate," Thompson said. "0 relapses. Excellent surgical results. And more importantly, you're proving that redemption works. That talented professionals shouldn't be discarded because of one mistake. The country needs this, Dr. Sullivan." Marcus looked out the window at the hospital where everything had fallen apart and then been rebuilt. "I'd love to," he said, "but I'll need help. A team. You'll have all the resources you need," Thompson promised. "Funding, staff, facilities. We just need you to lead." After hanging up, Marcus stood alone for a moment, processing. From invisible janitor to director of a national program. From being destroyed by a mistake to becoming a symbol of redemption. Fernando appeared in the doorway, as if he knew Marcus needed him. "I heard the news," he said. "National, huh? You're moving up in the world." "I'm scared," Marcus admitted. "It's a lot of responsibility. What if I fail again?" "Then you get up again," Fernando said, just as he had years before. "Marcus, look how much you've grown. From a broken man pushing a cleaning cart to a surgeon, changing the entire system. That's not luck. It's hard work, genuine redemption, and unwavering purpose. None of this would have been possible without you," Marcus said, emotional. "You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." "No," Fernando shook his head. I just saw what was always there. You did all the work. You chose to stand up. You chose to try again. You chose to turn pain into purpose. 3 years after Emily's surgery, the Phoenix program had expanded to 23 states, with over 300 professionals rehabilitated and reintegrated. Marcus traveled the country giving lectures, training mentors, and personally overseeing complex cases. But every Friday, no matter where he was, he returned to Boston. Friday was the day he dedicated to patients at Massachusetts General, the place where it all started. On one particular Friday, Marcus was on the third-floor hallway when he saw a cleaning cart being pushed by a young man around 30. The man's head was down, avoiding eye contact with the doctors passing by. Marcus stopped. "Hi," he said, making the janitor jump. "Sorry, didn't mean to scare you. What's your name?" "Kevin, sir," the man replied timidly. "Kevin, are you new here?" "Yes, sir. 3rd week." Marcus looked at the man, at his trembling hands, his eyes that wouldn't meet anyone's, the way he shrank as if hoping to be invisible. "Kevin, can I ask you something personal? Are you here because you need the job or because you're hiding?" Kevin looked startled, finally meeting Marcus's eyes. "How did you?" "Because I was exactly where you are," Marcus said gently. "Years ago, I pushed the same cart, cleaned the same hallways, kept my head down, hoping to be invisible." "Sir, I don't understand." Marcus took off his ID badge and showed it. "Dr. Marcus Sullivan, Director of Pediatric Cardiac Surgery." Kevin stared, confused. "But you said you were a janitor." "I was. For 15 years. I lost my medical license for a terrible mistake. I worked here, invisible, punishing myself every day, until someone gave me a second chance." Kevin stayed silent, processing. "Kevin, I don't know your story," Marcus continued. "I don't know what brought you here. But if you're hiding from something, if you're punishing yourself for a past mistake, I want you to know there's another way." He handed the young man a card. "This is the Phoenix program. If you were once a healthcare professional, if you lost your license or career for some reason, we can help. I'm not saying it'll be easy, but it's possible. I'm living proof." Kevin looked at the card with shaking hands, tears forming in his eyes. "I used to be a nurse," he whispered. "Pediatrics. Worked 8 years. Until I got hooked on opioids after back surgery. I stole meds from the hospital. Got caught. Lost everything." "How long clean?" Marcus asked. 2 years. But no hospital wants to hire me. Even to mop floors, I had to lie on the application. Marcus put a hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to lie anymore. And you don't have to hide. Call that number on Monday. We'll help you come back. It won't be quick, and it won't be easy. But if you're willing to do the work, we're willing to give you a chance." Kevin wiped his tears, holding the card as if it were the most precious thing in the world. "Why?" he asked. "Why do you care about someone like me?" "Because someone cared about me when I didn't deserve it," Marcus replied. "And because everyone deserves a second chance to redeem themselves." That afternoon, Marcus had his last surgery of the week. A 10-year-old girl with a rare heart condition. Daniel was his first assistant now, his skills having grown tremendously. "Ready?" Marcus asked as they entered the OR. "Always," Daniel replied, confident. The surgery lasted 6 hours. It was delicate, complex, requiring every ounce of skill Marcus and Daniel had. But when they were done, the girl's heart was beating strong and regular. "Good work," Marcus said, pride evident in his voice. "Your sutures were perfect. Your father would be proud." "My father would be proud of you too," Daniel said. "Of the man you've become. Of the legacy you're building." When they left the OR, they found not only the girl's family waiting, but a small crowd. Emily Rodriguez was there, now 11, wearing a soccer uniform. She joined a team and was thriving. Kevin, the janitor, stood in the back, watching nervously. Andre, Julia, and other Phoenix graduates were present. Carla, Roberto, and Patricia were all smiling. And in the center of everyone, in a wheelchair but with bright eyes, was Fernando, now 77 and officially retired. He never missed one of Marcus's big surgeries. "What's going on here?" Marcus asked, confused. Carla stepped forward holding a cake. "Dr. Sullivan," she said, Today marks exactly 4 years since the day you saved that man in cardiac arrest in the hallway. The day you became a doctor again. And we wanted to celebrate. For years, Marcus could barely believe it. Feels like a lifetime. It has been a lifetime, Fernando said. A new one. For you, for all of us. You didn't just come back, Marcus. You transformed this hospital. You transformed hundreds of careers. You saved countless lives. Emily ran to Marcus and hugged him tight. You're my hero, she said. And not just because you saved me, but because you show that people can change. That mistakes aren't the end. Marcus knelt to be at her height. You're my hero too, he said. You and your parents gave me a chance when no one else would. You showed me I still had value. Emily's parents joined the hug, the three of them holding Marcus together. We got her latest tests today, Mrs. Rodriguez said. Her heart is perfect, functioning as if it was never sick. She's going to live a completely normal life. Not just normal, Mr. Rodriguez corrected. Extraordinary, because of you. While everyone celebrated, Marcus stepped aside for a moment, walking to a window overlooking the hospital parking lot. He looked down at the exact spot where he used to park his old bike when arriving for his janitor shift. Fernando joined him, his wheelchair silent on the polished floor. What are you thinking about? The mentor asked. How strange life is, Marcus replied. 4 years ago, I was down there, invisible, broken, hopeless. Today I'm here, surrounded by people who care, doing work that matters. How did this happen? It happened because you chose it, Fernando said. Every day, you chose to get up. You chose to try. You chose to believe you could be better, even when your brain said otherwise. Marcus turned to look at the celebration. All those lives touched, transformed, saved. I still think about James, he admitted. I still think about Thomas. I still carry the guilt. And you always will, Fernando said gently. But now you carry something else too. Purpose. Legacy. Redemption. The guilt doesn't disappear, Marcus. You just learn to carry it alongside other, heavier and more beautiful things. Do you think James would forgive me? Marcus asked, his voice breaking slightly. If he could see all this. Fernando smiled, tears in his eyes. He forgave you a long time ago, old friend. Now it's your turn to forgive yourself. That night, alone in his office, Marcus opened a special drawer he kept locked. Inside was the original letter James had written, the one saying he couldn't forgive. Next to it, Marcus placed a new letter, the one Daniel had given him, written by James before he died, expressing forgiveness. Marcus took both letters and held them together. I did it, James, he whispered. I turned our tragedy into something meaningful. I saved lives. I helped people. I built a legacy that honors you and Thomas. He looked at the whiteboard on the wall, now with 184 names, each patient he'd operated on since his return. But you know what's funny? He continued, speaking to his absent friend. I realize now I didn't do it for redemption. I did it because it's who I am. Because, deep down, I never stopped being a doctor. Even when I was pushing that cart, even when I was mopping floors, I was still a doctor. I just needed to remember. He put the letters back in the drawer, but this time he didn't lock it. Thank you for giving me Daniel, he said, for letting your son become part of this legacy. He's extraordinary, James. As talented as you. As compassionate as Thomas. And I promise I'll teach him everything I know. Marcus stood, looking out over the lights of Boston. 5 years later, Marcus stood on a very different stage. It wasn't a hospital, but the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. He had been invited to receive the National Humanitarian Service in Medicine Award, an honor given to only a few doctors each decade. The auditorium was packed with over 2,000 people, medical leaders, politicians, former patients, and Phoenix program graduates, now present in all 50 states and expanded internationally to 12 countries. Marcus was backstage, fussing with his tie nervously. At 60, his hair was completely gray, but his eyes had a spark that hadn't been there when he pushed the cleaning cart. Nervous? Daniel asked, now a fully trained surgeon and co-director of the Phoenix program. Terrified, Marcus admitted. I don't feel comfortable being celebrated. I still feel like I'm just doing what I should have always done. And that's exactly why you deserve this award, Daniel said. You don't do it for recognition. You do it because it's right. Emily appeared, now 16, tall and healthy, captain of her school soccer team and an aspiring doctor. Dr. Marcus, she hugged him tightly. I'm so proud of you. I'm the one who should be proud of you, Marcus said, smiling. I heard you got into Harvard on a full scholarship. Medicine, right? Pediatric cardiac surgery. Emily corrected. I'm going to follow in your footsteps. I'm going to save kids like you saved me. Marcus had to wipe his eyes. The world needs doctors like you, he said. Doctors who know both fragility and strength. You're going to be extraordinary. Kevin appeared, wearing a white coat. He had completed the Phoenix program 3 years earlier and now worked as a pediatric nurse at Massachusetts General, mentoring other professionals in recovery. I came to wish you luck, Kevin said, and to say thank you. Again, for the 1,000th time. You don't need to thank me, Marcus said. You did the work. You chose to recover. You chose to rebuild. But you showed me it was possible, Kevin replied. When you handed me that card in that corridor, you saved my life, just as surely as you saved Emily's. Marcus walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. In the front row sat a special group, Carla, now head of surgery at the hospital and a senior mentor in the Phoenix program, Roberto, who had opened his own clinic focusing on underserved communities, Patricia, retired but still an active volunteer in the program, and Fernando, in his wheelchair, his eyes shining with pride. Next to Fernando was an empty chair holding a photo, James and Thomas, smiling. Daniel had insisted on honoring them this way. The presenter, a U.S. Senator, spoke about Marcus's path, the meteoric rise, the devastating fall, and the inspiring rebuilding. Dr. Marcus Sullivan, she said, is not just an exceptional surgeon. He is a living symbol that mistakes do not define who we are, but what we do afterward does. Under his leadership, the Phoenix program has reintegrated more than 1,200 healthcare professionals worldwide. These professionals have collectively saved more than 15,000 lives in the past 5 years. But more important than numbers, Dr. Sullivan has transformed our understanding of redemption, recovery, and second chances in medicine. She handed him a heavy crystal trophy. For your extraordinary service, for your courage in turning personal tragedy into collective good, and for being a beacon of hope for all who have failed and want to stand up again, it is my honor to present you with the National Humanitarian Service in Medicine Award. Marcus accepted the trophy. His hands, the hands that had once trembled with guilt and alcohol, now firm and steady. He stepped to the microphone, looking out over the crowd. 21 years ago, he began, his voice clear but full of emotion. I made the worst mistake a doctor can make. Under the influence of alcohol, I operated on a child. My hands faltered. The child died. That child was the son of my best friend, Dr. James Peterson. His name was Thomas. He was 6 years old. The silence in the auditorium was absolute. James never forgave me in life. He killed himself 3 months later. And for 15 years, I lived in a hell of my own making. I worked as a janitor in the same hospital where I'd once been a star. I cleaned the hallways where I used to save lives. I punished myself every day for my mistake. Marcus paused, looking directly at James and Thomas's photo. But then something extraordinary happened. People gave me chances I didn't think I deserved. Dr. Fernando Alves believed in me. The Rodriguez family trusted me with their daughter's life. Daniel Peterson, James's son and Thomas's brother, chose to forgive me and learn from me. And slowly, painfully, I learned that redemption is not about erasing the past. It's about honoring it by doing better in the future. He raised the trophy. This award is not mine. It belongs to James, who, even in his deepest pain, wrote that he hoped I would return to saving lives. It belongs to Thomas, whose memory motivates every surgery I perform. It belongs to Fernando, who never gave up on his student. It belongs to Emily, who gave me purpose when I had none. It belongs to every Phoenix program graduate who had the courage to try again after failing. Tears streamed down. Marcus's face, but he didn't wipe them away. And it is for every person in this auditorium, every person watching, every professional who made a mistake and thinks their career is over. This award is my way of saying, you can stand up, you can rebuild, you can turn your greatest failure into your greatest legacy. It won't be easy. It will hurt, but it's possible. I am living proof. The audience rose, applause echoing off the walls. Marcus saw Fernando wiping his eyes. He saw Daniel smiling through tears. He saw Emily raising her arms in celebration. He saw hundreds of Phoenix graduates, each with their own stories of falling and rebuilding, applauding not just for him, but for the promise of redemption he represented. After the ceremony, there was a private reception. Marcus was talking with other honorees when he felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned and saw a woman around 65, gray hair, kind eyes full of tears. "Dr. Sullivan," she said, her voice trembling. "My name is Margaret Peterson. I am James's wife." Marcus's world stopped. In 21 years, he had never spoken to her. She had disappeared after James's funeral, taking Daniel away from Boston. "Mrs. Peterson," Marcus said, barely able to breathe. I have no words to express." "I know," she interrupted gently. "You don't need them. I came here today for 3 reasons. First, to tell you I watched your speech and cried. Not from sadness, but from relief, maybe. To see that something good came from our tragedy." Marcus just nodded, unable to speak. "Second," she continued, "to thank you for training Daniel, for giving him what James couldn't, a mentor who understands both the art and the weight of medicine. Daniel calls me every week and talks about you with admiration. You became for him what James once was for you." "He's extraordinary," Marcus managed, "just like James." "And third," Margaret took his hand, "to give you this." She handed him a yellowed envelope, clearly old. "James wrote this 3 weeks before he died. I found it among his things years later. It was addressed to you, but I couldn't deliver it. I was too angry, too hurt. But now, seeing the man you've become, the good you've done, I feel it's time." Marcus opened the envelope with shaking hands. James's handwriting, familiar and painful, covered the page. "Marcus, if you're reading this, it means Margaret has finally found the courage to give it to you. Or maybe I found the courage to deliver it myself, though I doubt it. The pain of losing Thomas is a black hole consuming me. Some days I can't breathe. Some days I don't want to. But in my moments of clarity, when the pain eases enough for me to think, I remember who you were. The brilliant doctor, the loyal friend, the man who saved so many children before failing mine. I want to hate you, Marcus. God knows I've tried. But hate requires energy I no longer have. And deep down, I know the truth. You didn't kill Thomas on purpose. Your addiction did. Your illness did. And I failed to see the signs, to help you when you needed me. So I write this not to forgive. I can't yet, but to plant a seed. I hope that someday, when the pain isn't so sharp, you return to being a doctor. Not for me. For the other children. For the other Thomases who will need your brilliant hands. Don't waste your gift because of my temporary hatred. Don't let my pain destroy your future the way losing Thomas destroyed my present. Be better than I am being right now. Be the Marcus I knew. The one who operated with love. The one who saw every patient as a miracle. The one my son would have been honored to meet." James Marcus collapsed into a chair, the letter trembling in his hands. 21 years. For 21 years, he had carried the belief that James died hating him. And now, Margaret knelt beside him, holding his hands. "He loved you, Marcus," she said softly, "even in all that pain. He loved you. And I learned, after years of my own pain and anger, that loving someone doesn't mean never failing. It means trying to do better afterward.